Hello, and welcome to another lesson in our series of lessons based on the book of Proverbs from the Old Testament. This lesson is entitled Wisdom for the Workplace. We'll be looking at passages from chapters 6, 11, and chapters 22. As we've previously stated, Proverbs is a part of what we call the wisdom literature of the Old Testament, along with Job and Ecclesiastes and the Song of Solomon. Now, the other three books are all written in a prose form, where the Proverbs is written in a style that we think of as a proverb, short statements that give advice on successful living. As we've said before, the Hebrew wisdom literature, though, is distinctive from all other wisdom literature, of which there's a lot, in that the Hebrew's wisdom literature always start with God. The advice is on how to live successfully in harmony with God's order, with the way that God created things, the way God intended. And it goes back to that statement in that very first chapter that it is the relationship, the fear of God, that is the beginning of wisdom. That relationship with God where we acknowledge who He is, our dependence on Him, and we humble ourselves, get over who we are, and agree to rely on Him. That is the beginning of wisdom in the Hebrew sense of wisdom literature. Although we pointed out that we attribute the book of Proverbs to Solomon, we realize Solomon did not originate all of the Proverbs contained in the book. The internal evidence indicates that others had written some of them. However, the passages we're going to look at today all do seem to have been originated by Solomon when he was king. The theme of the past three passages today is talking about wisdom for the workplace. What should be your attitude? What should be the characteristics of one who is in the workplace, one who is being successfully living in harmony with God's plan of things? And there are three particular characteristics that these three passages will point out. And we want to look at those in some detail. Now, before we start, we need to stop and think about the idea of work. In the human sense, in the human economy of things, work is like a curse. Work is a drudgery. Work is something we have to do. Work is considered to be the negative. However, and some people even suggest that work is God's punishment on man for his sin. That is, after the fall, God made man work hard to survive. Well, let me read to you Genesis chapter 2, verse 15. This is a statement that is made before the fall. Genesis 2:15 reads, "The Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and take care of it." In other words, He created man to work. He created man to take care of His creation. So work is not a punishment. Work is a gift from God. It gives man some purpose, some meaning in life. And so we want to look at what characteristics, what should be our attitude, what should be our perspective on work, as Solomon would instruct the young, his son, or other young people, and the simple. As I said, we're going to be looking in chapter 6, and chapter 11, and chapter 22. Let's start with chapter 6. Chapter 6, verse 6. He says, "Go to the ant, you sluggard, consider its ways and be wise." Now, we start with this idea that he is speaking to one who he identifies as the sluggard. The sluggard. The word sluggard means sluggish or slow. The implication is one who is lazy. Now, this is not the only place that Solomon refers to the sluggard. He describes him in many different ways other places. For example, in chapter 26, verse 14, he wrote, "As the door turns on its hinge, so a sluggard turns on his bed." Now, you're going to say, well, what does that mean? Well, a door swings on its hinge. But where does it go? It swings one way, then swings back the way it came, then it swings back. It keeps swinging, but it really goes nowhere. And Solomon wrote, the sluggard swings on his bed, or he turns on his bed like the door on a hinge. That is, he rolls over in bed, going nowhere. He's not getting up to accomplish anything. He's lazy. He's in bed. Chapter 12, verse 27. The lazy, or the sluggard, do not roast any game, but the diligent feed on the riches of the hunt. Now here's the idea. Here's the imagery. If you're going out to hunt, and the purpose of the hunt is to kill prey so that you can eat, so that you can feast on what you've killed. Well, the hunt is only part of it. Then you've got to clean the animal, then you've got to cook the animal, and then you eat. Okay? So he says the sluggard doesn't roast the game. He may start something, but he doesn't finish it. He never completes what he's out to do. That's the idea of the sluggard. Chapter 22, verse 13. The sluggard says, there's a lion outside. I'd be killed in the public square. Now, the lion outside would be an excuse to stay inside. And the sluggard looks for any excuse to stay home rather than going out and work. He looks for any excuse to hide at home. Chapter 26, verse 16. A sluggard is wiser in his own eyes than 7 people who answer discreetly. Idea is the sluggard thinks he's got everything all figured out, and he thinks himself so wise that he is not only wiser than any other person, he's wiser than 7 other people. He thinks of himself as being very wise. He knows he knows everything. He doesn't need anybody to advise him. He doesn't need anybody to give him instruction. Chapter 13, verse 4. A sluggard's appetite is never filled, but the desires of the diligent are fully satisfied. The sluggard is always dreaming and wanting, not willing to do anything about it, but always wanting to get things, but never accomplishes them. The diligent go out and accomplish their goals. The sluggard is always longing for good things, not doing anything about it, just longing for it, just dreaming about it. Never achieves them. The sluggard's appetite is never filled. The desires of the diligent are fully satisfied. They set their plans, they go out, they do the work, and they accomplish what they set out. These are the distinctions between the sluggard and the diligent. Okay? The advice given in this particular passage then is, you sluggard, go to the ant. Consider its ways and be wise. He says, go to the ant, study the ant, and learn something. A frequent feature of the Proverbs is to compare the principle to some common feature or thing that was known in daily life. For example, in Proverbs 4:18, the path of the righteous is like the morning sun, shining ever brighter to the full light of day. 19:12, a king's rage is like the roar of a lion, but his favor is like dew on the grass. You see, we're comparing the path of the righteous with the morning sun. They were familiar every day, the sun coming up, shining ever brighter. They knew he starts off dim at daybreak and gets brighter and brighter and brighter, and that's the path of the righteous. The king's rage, a king's anger, is like the roar of a lion. They were very familiar with the roar of a lion. But his favor was like dew on the grass, refreshing, that which brings nourishment. He's making these comparisons with things of daily life. Well, he's doing the same thing here. He says, go to the ant. Now, Israel was an agricultural nation. As such, the individual Israelite would be very familiar with the ant. Now, the ant was considered to be one of the least significant of all of God's creation. So small, so tiny, so insignificant, not amounting to anything, maybe sometime a little bit of an annoyance, but just, something you pay no attention to. Isn't it interesting? Proverbs, Solomon is saying that you, the most magnificent feature of God's creation, man, should study the ant, the least significant of God's creation, to learn from him. Now you see lots of implications here: humility, willingness to learn. But he says, go to the ant and learn from the ant. The ant is only referred to twice in the Bible, here and one other place in Proverbs. In Proverbs 30:25, Solomon wrote, "Ants are creatures of little strength, yet they store up their food in the summer." One commentator said, "No insect is more laborious, not even the bee itself, and none is more fondly attached to or more careful of its young than the ant." So while the ant seems to be insignificant, there are some very fascinating things to learn from the ant, because the ant is a very hard worker. And Solomon is saying, if you wish to be wise, go and learn from the ant. What is there to notice about the ant? Well, he tells us. It, the ant, has no commander, no overseer, no ruler. Yet it stores its provisions in the summer and gathers its food in the harvest. Here is this insignificant little ant, very, very industrious, very hard at work. Yet when you study the ant, you see there is no king. Unlike with the bees, there's a queen bee in the hive. There is no king. There is no ruler. There is no overseer. There's no one telling him what to do. There's no one telling him when to do it. No one telling him how to do it. He's out there doing it. He's out there taking care of things. Without being ordered to do so, he's very industrious and out there working. And look what he says. He's looking at the accomplishments. He stores food in the summer and gathers food at harvest. We got then this idea of the ant is taking care of himself by storing food, gathering food to eat, and then storing food so they would have food in the future. Now, agricultural area. They know that the harvest comes in the summer, starting in the spring through the summer, and then early fall, depending upon the type of crop you're talking about. The ant is out there knowing that if he's going to get his food, he's got to be working hard during this time, the summer and the harvest. In the depths of winter, when there's nothing growing, there's not the food there available. So without anybody telling him, the ant is out there. He's diligent in his work. He's industrious. He is out there gathering food to eat, storing food for the winter so he'll have food to take him to the next harvest, without anyone telling him to do it, without anyone giving him any instructions or whatever. As I said, in the Proverbs speak of the sluggard elsewhere, and in chapter 20, verse 4, sluggards do not plow in season, so at harvest time they look but find nothing. The one who is not willing to plow can't expect to find a harvest. And he says, learn from the ant. He doesn't have to be told to do it. You shouldn't have to be told to go out and plow. You should be diligent in your work life. Chapter 24, verses 30 and 31. Solomon wrote, I went past the field of the sluggard, past the vineyards of someone who has no sense. Thorns had come up everywhere. The ground was covered with weeds, and the stone wall was in ruins. The sluggard is not only not plowed, but he's not taking care of the field. He's not pulling the weeds. He's not preparing the field. He's not repairing the walls that gets broken down. This is the role of the sluggard. And he's saying, you need to be wise. Don't be like the sluggard. Be wise. Be like the ant. Be industrious. Be diligent. Be diligent in working without having to be told. Be diligent in your work. And then there's a rebuke. How long will you lie there, you sluggard? When will you get up from your sleep? This is a rebuke. He says, you're content to lay in bed while work needs to be done. You need to get, how long are you going to lay there? How long are you going to stay there without getting your work done? How long? When? When are you going to get up? When are you going to get started? Now, these are rhetorical questions. He's not really asking for an answer, but the suggested answer is, get up now. How long are you going to lay there? Stop it now. When are you going to get up? Get up now. That's what he's suggesting to him. Look at the ant. See how diligent the ant is. Now, the rebuke is aimed directly at the sluggard. But remember who it is that's reading this. The one who's reading this is the young and the simple, not necessarily the sluggard. So he's warning them against being the sluggard. He said, don't be like the sluggard and stay in bed. How long are you going to be there, sluggard? Get up. Now is the time for you to go to the ant, learn from the ant, be diligent in your work. And then he gives a little statement, a little pithy statement that we remember. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands to rest, and poverty will come on you like a thief, and scarcity like an armed man. It kind of is a little saying that is a warning. He says, a little slumber, a little sleep. You know, the excuse. Oh, I was up late last night. I need to sleep in. A little slumber, a little sleep. Always find a reason to sleep. Always find an excuse for not doing what needs to be done. Well, let me just take a little nap. Let me just rest a little bit. A little folding of the hands. That is, instead of out there working with my hands, let me just stay here just a little bit longer. Procrastination. Procrastination. He says, and look what happens when you procrastinate. The consequences are poverty and scarcity. Poverty, the absence of what you need to survive. Scarcity, the absence, it's the same as a parallelism, the absence of what you need to flourish. But notice what he says. Poverty comes like a thief in the night, like a thief. A thief comes when it's unexpected. A thief comes quickly. A thief comes without warning. You don't work, you're not diligent, poverty will come upon you. You don't have to, it's not going to, hey, if you don't come to work, it's not going to happen like that. A little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands, and suddenly you're going to be without. And scarcity will come like an armed man. The imagery here of an armed man is he's irresistible. You can't avoid it. It is inevitable. An armed man is one that you can't resist. So he says, yeah, you can come up with excuses, a little sleep, a little slumber, a little folding of the hands. But guess what happens? The consequences are poverty and scarcity. Quickly, immediately, and inevitably. He's saying, don't be like the sluggard. Go to the ant and learn from the ant. Well, let's look at another characteristic. And to look at this characteristic, we want to turn over to chapter 11. We're looking at chapter 11, and we're going to start down with verse 24. Now we're going to be talking about generosity. The idea of what is my perspective on my material possessions? How do I view my material possessions? He says, verse 24, one person gives freely, yet gains even more. Another withholds unduly, but comes to poverty. This seems to be backwards. In other words, he says, the one who gives, gets. That doesn't make sense. How can I gain if I'm giving away? But that's the wisdom. That's the idea. If your attitude is hoarding, if your attitude is about me and mine, if your attitude is about what I have and what I own and what I want, then giving it away is not consistent. But when you're living in harmony with God's plan and living in right relationship with other people, there is a spirit of generosity. There is a perspective on what we have, the material things we have, that causes us to release our hands. And what he says is, as a wise statement, that the one who gives generously, the one who gives freely, is generous. He gains. The one who withholds unduly. Now, he did not say that you are to give everything you have away. That would be reading this in an extreme, and it doesn't say that. He says the one who withholds unduly. That adverb unduly is describing a manner that which is not right. One who withholds more than what is right. In other words, there are times when we are to be able to maintain possessions. However, when that becomes all-consuming, when that becomes the most important matter of our work ethic, is what I can have and keep, then that's withholding unduly. And to the one who withholds unduly, what does he say? He will come to poverty. He will come to that spiritual poverty and possibly financial poverty. It's like a paradox. The way to give is to give. If you hoard, you lose. To keep is to lose. Now, we know that this has specific applications spiritually. But in the general sense of things, it applies physically as well. People who are generous with their time and with their materials and their possessions have a much broader influence and seem to have a better community life, and they gain. They gain. So, now, as we said before, the Proverbs are not prophecies, nor are they promises. But in the material sense of things, this is the normal way to expect, that you will receive more by giving. And in the spiritual, for sure, you receive by giving. So, be generous. Be generous. Look what he says in verse 25. A generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. This is a motivation. He's trying to motivate the young, the simple, to be generous, because the generous person will prosper. Now, the word prosper technically means will get fat. In that day and time, a person that was fat, or an animal that was fat, was thought to be one who was prospering because they had a lot to eat and it showed it. So he says the one who is generous will get fat, will prosper. They will receive. People who give will receive. A parallelism. The generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others, that means to give, they will be refreshed. Verse 26. People curse the one who hoards grain, but pray God's blessing on the one who's willing to sell. Now we've got to put those two lines together to see what he's saying. He's talking about at the end of the harvest season, when the crop owner has gathered the harvest and now is deciding what to do with it. The one who hoards the grain, it's referring, when you put it in context with the other one, the one's willing to sell, means he's the one who's not willing to sell. Now, what do we got? What's going on here? Well, we know that the law of supply and demand says that when there is a limited supply, prices go up. And the idea is this one who owns the grain refuses to sell the grain because he wants to create a scarcity so the prices will go up and he can make more money. It's all about me profiting. And what happens? People curse that person. People don't appreciate. People look down on. They curse the one who's hoarding, who's refusing to sell because he's trying to manipulate the market so he can make more money. The opposite, though, he says, is they pray God's blessings on the one who's willing to sell. Now, he didn't say he's giving them his crops. He's giving it all away. He's selling it for them. But he's doing so fairly and appropriately, not trying to maximize his own well-being, but he sells it for an appropriate price. So that person, they pray God's blessings on him, and he is going to thrive, do well. Then verse 27, whoever seeks good finds favor, but evil comes to the one who searches for it. Contrast in attitudes. The one who's seeking good is going to find it. Good things are going to happen to them. They're generous, they're going to receive. Good things are going to happen to them. They're treating people fairly, people will pray God's blessings on them. Good things are going to happen to them. On the other hand, the one who seeks, and let's look at this, read this specifically now. He said, but evil comes to the one who searches for it. Now you see the word it is a pronoun that refers back to the noun that is the subject of the sentence, and that's evil. So if you search for evil, you'll find it. Congratulations. You got where you wanted to go. If that's what you're doing. If your perspective on life is about me, if your whole perspective is on evil, you'll find it. But that's not what you're looking for. The Proverbs is trying to help us know joy, peace, happiness, contentment, righteousness, right relationship with God, right relationship with other people. That's what wisdom is all about. And he says, if you want to ignore all of that and go looking for evil, congratulations, you'll find it. Evil comes to the one who searches for it. Those who trust in their riches will fall, but the righteous thrive like a green leaf. Again, we're coming back to the idea of generosity. The one who trusts in his riches. The one who trusts in the riches is the one who is saying, this is mine, I earned it, I'm going to keep it, I'm going to make the most out of it, this is my crop, I'll sell it for whatever price I want me. He says, if that's what if you're worshiping your riches, you'll fall. There's a destruction coming. There's a loss. He says, if that's what you're all about, is searching for your riches, you may have riches, but it won't satisfy you. You can't take it with you. You may amass an amount of riches for somebody else to spend. You can't take it with you. So he says, those who trust in their riches will fall, but the righteous thrive like a green leaf. The righteous, those who walk in right relationship with God and right relationship with other people, they thrive. Now, the idea of a green leaf, the idea is a green leaf is obviously a leaf that's alive and growing. For that leaf to grow, it has been supplied with the sufficient nutrient and moisture coming up through the tree trunk, out the limb to the leaf. In other words, that leaf is in relationship with the trunk and the root, and that root and trunk are supplying and helping that leaf to grow and thrive. So the green leaf represents life, it represents prosperity, it represents sustenance. He's saying the one who is willing to consider others, the righteous, the one who is looking for a right relationship with other people, they're going to thrive like a green leaf. There's that imagery again, using that which is familiar. Thrive like a green leaf. So, in addition to being diligent, learn from the ant, he's also saying you need to be generous. You need to have the right attitude toward your wealth. If you hoard it, you'll fall. But if you will be generous with it, you will thrive like a leaf. People will pray God's blessing on you. So, second characteristic is be generous. Let's look now for the third characteristic over to chapter 22. In chapter 22, let's start reading at verse 1. A good name is more desirable than great riches. To be esteemed is better than silver or gold. Now we need to recognize something as background, and that is in the culture of their day, they lived in what sociologists would call an honor-shame culture. That is, the idea of people honoring you, respecting you, speaking well of you, was such a motivational feature that you would do all kinds of things to achieve honor and to avoid shame. Okay? Now, technically, when this verse 1 says a good name is more desirable than gold or riches, in the Hebrew, the word good is not there. If you read the King James translations, you'll see that the word good is either written in italics or it's written in all capital letters, suggesting that this is a word that was added in by the translators. However, that is a very appropriate interpretation or translation, because you see, back then when they said if you have a name, that means you have a reputation of honor and respect. That's what you were looking for, was a name. The idea of a name was something that was good. It carried with it the connotations of a good name. So that's a very appropriate translation to say a good name. The idea to be known, for people to pay respect and to honor you. Why are they doing that? Because of the way you treat them. A good name is more desirable than great riches. In other words, we need to keep our priorities right. If the way I can get great riches is cutting corners, stabbing people in the back, taking advantage of people, obviously that's going to destroy my good name. But those riches really aren't going to do me any good. The good name is more important than great riches. In fact, there are lots of companies in their advertising will do all kinds of things, even at their own expense, to promote their name because they think that will sell more products. The idea of a good name, it's more desirable than great riches. To be esteemed is better than silver or gold. This is a parallelism. A good name is more desirable than great riches. To be esteemed, to be highly thought of, to be spoken well of. This is more valuable. This brings more satisfaction than silver or gold. Having a lot of money and a lot of enemies, well, you can be miserable. You can have less money, but a lot of friends and be a lot happier. So he's saying, watch your attitude. The third characteristic of the workplace, the third characteristic of the worker in the workplace is treat others with integrity. We said to be diligent, to be generous, and now it's integrity. Practice a life of integrity. If you practice a life of integrity, people will speak well of you. And that's much better than having a lot of money. Rich and poor have this in common. The Lord is the maker of them all. He's coming back and he's basically giving you a little reality call. He says, you need to understand something, young person. Rich and poor, those who have and those that don't have, the opposite ends of the continuum, extreme opposites. He says they have something in common. They're both made by the same Creator. There's a little bit of humbling going on. You may be rich, but remember, you were made by the same Maker. In our current colloquial, we'd say, puts on his pants one leg at a time, just like everybody else. Well, there's that commonality. No matter who you are, rich or poor, there's that common theme. That is, their Lord is the one Maker. Now notice the word Lord there is spelled in all capitals, so it's Yahweh. And they understood Yahweh as Creator. So he says, your perspective should be colored by the realization that you aren't necessarily any better than anybody else. God made that other person in His image, and they're due the respect and dignity owed to them, even if they're poor, even if they don't look like you, even if they aren't necessarily your friend. He's saying, get over yourself. Don't hold yourself up. You have this common factor, and this common factor is Yahweh is the Creator of both of you. And remember, Yahweh created man in His own image, and so that other person is created in the image of God. He says, the prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. A contrast. The prudent, the wise, the simple, the one that's not paying attention, the one who is not guarding his heart, the one who is not sensitive to the leading of God. He says, the prudent, the wise, what does he do? He sees danger and takes refuge. He sees danger. He's guarding his heart. He's on the lookout. And when he sees danger, he takes refuge. Refuge is referring to the idea of a fortified city where you can be protected, where you will be removed from the danger. So he says, the prudent sees danger. He's looking for it. He's watching out. And then when he sees it, he will in fact take refuge. He will go the other way. He will steer clear of it. But the simple keep on going and pay the penalty. The simple, not looking for the danger, not realizing the danger, just walks right in to the mouth of danger, walks right into destruction. This is a contrast now. In the workplace, our attitude should be that which we are always on guard, lest we get sucked in to treating other people a way that would cause us just to walk right in to destruction. Humility is the fear of the Lord. Its wages are riches and honor and life. Humility. A person with integrity is going to be a person that is humble. Now, why do I say that? The opposite of humility is it's all about me. Me, me, me. And if you're going to practice integrity and be fair and just, you have to get over me. Because if the world is centered around me, I will do anything I need to do for me. But if I treat you with integrity, I get over me. And I realize, you know what? You may even be right. I may need to come to the conclusion that sometimes I may be wrong. You've got to get over that. So he says, humility is the fear of the Lord. You have to get over yourself. And when you get over yourself and recognize who you're not, And you recognize who God is. That's the fear of Yahweh. That's the relationship with Yahweh. When you get over yourself and you recognize who you're not, I can't handle everything by myself. And you recognize who He is. I am dependent on Him. I will listen to Him. That's humility. And the result of humility, as I said, humility is required for integrity. The results for humility is riches, honor, and life. Now, again, we know people who are very humble, live life with integrity, very righteous, who die young, or who suffer. So this is not necessarily a promise. But in the general scope of things, in the physical sense, in this temporal world, when you live a life of humility and you live a life of wisdom, following God's plan, there is life and health and riches and honor. This normally does come. But in the spiritual sense, we know this is a guarantee. In the spiritual sense, in the eternal sense, there is life and riches and honor that comes when we are humble, and humility begins with the fear of Yahweh, recognizing who He is and our dependence on Him. Well, this is then the third characteristic of wisdom in the workplace, and that's integrity. Treating others fairly, treating others with dignity, being humble and accepting others. So this lesson has taught us three characteristics for life in the workplace: diligence, generosity, and integrity. And we go right back to where we started. The fear of Yahweh is the beginning of wisdom. Living these characteristics starts with that relationship with God and allowing Him to live in us. Getting beyond ourselves, getting beyond our riches, getting beyond our possessions, and being willing to share and treat others with respect and dignity. And as a result, we will be honored, we'll be esteemed, thought well of, and we will enjoy life, and we will enjoy riches and honor. Let's pray. Father, we thank You for these words that remind us that as You have called us, You equip us, and that if we will but open ourselves and continually seek Your wisdom, continually seek Your leadership, and let You direct our daily lives, and give ourselves over to You, that You will live in us and through us, such that we will work diligently in all that we do as unto the Lord, that we will be generous with our time and influence and rich and finances, such that Your kingdom will be built, that we will live a life of integrity, treating others with respect and dignity, and that You will then bring life and honor and riches to us. For what You've promised You would do for us, and what You are doing for us and through us in these days, we thank You and praise You in Jesus' name. Amen. Thank You.